Good morning and welcome back to A Worthy Conversation podcast hosted by, me. My name is Mercy Scherger and I am so thrilled to introduce you to our guest today. His name is Dean Butler and many of you probably saw him on Buffy the Vampire or Little House on the Prairie, or maybe you just saw him on one of his many notable roles. I was so thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with Dean. I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie and I still love it to this day. He has been a massive part of creating the enduring legacy of Little House on the Prairie, its show, his character's name, his character Almanzo Wilder. There's just so much that we discuss. We kind of zone in on Little House on the Prairie, but we also discuss some other things as well. So I am so thrilled to share this interview with you all. Can you share a little bit about yourself and what drew you to acting?
Well, Mercy, first of all, thanks for having me on your program today. And so my journey to acting, I think, was really as a young person looking for a place to be seen and heard. And I think that's a big deal for kids. We all, when we're young, need to find that place where we feel like we excel or stand out, make a difference. And I wasn't finding that on the athletic field. I certainly wasn't finding it in the classroom. And I was a very average student and a very average athlete. And really the turning point for me came in the 10th grade when I was invited by my geometry teacher, Mr. Cochran, to do the scorebook at varsity basketball games. Now, as it turned out, we were going to have, and I don't know if you're familiar with what the scorebook is in basketball, but there's a statistical book where you keep track of points and fouls and all of that. And it's the snapshot of the game that anybody can look at that page and they can essentially know exactly what happened in that game.
Okay.
Scoring, fouls, and all that sort of thing. So anyway, I was invited to do that. And before the game began, I was there and I got to the game and, I was learning how to do the book, which I thought was really cool. And then before the game, Mr. Cochran asked who was going to introduce the starting lineups. And sitting in front of me or us on the scorer's table was this old Shure silver chrome microphone, very standard in the day. And if that moment had happened in a movie, the gym would have gone quiet and dark, and there would have been a spotlight shining down on the microphone if you were doing it in a movie. And I just broke out in a cold sweat thinking I could speak into this microphone and people would hear me. And that was sort of the beginning, Mercy. I introduced the starting lineups, and what was cool for me was that the crowd in the gym cheered when I spoke the names of the players. Well, they were cheering for the players. They weren't cheering for me. I know that, but the fact that I could say something, the player's name, that would make the audience cheer was just this amazingly powerful thing for me to be able to do that. So that really started it. And after doing that for a season, I reasoned that, well, if I can do this, if I can speak into a microphone and people will cheer, what will happen if I am on a stage and people can see me, doing something performance-wise?
Yeah.
And I followed a girl I had a crush on into a production of Once Upon a Mattress. Once Upon a Mattress was a very popular musical in the 60s and 70s. Carol Burnett, the great Carol Burnett, in 1959 brought this musical, or starred in this musical when it made its Broadway debut. And it's the story of The Princess and the Pea. Okay. And it's a very funny, silly musical, so it's a fairy tale kind of thing. And I was in the chorus and loved that. And that really was the start for me of all of this. And I got really involved in the theater for my senior year in high school, and then took that interest to college. And during my college years was I decided to see if I could get into commercials. And I lived near San Francisco in those years. And so there was a really good agent in San Francisco who agreed to represent me. And I started going on commercial calls and doing small parts. I got my first speaking lines on a show called The Streets of San Francisco, which you may never have heard of, Mercy, but it was a very popular show in the 1970s and early 80s.
Yeah, I think I've heard my parents talk about it.
Okay. So it starred Carl Malden and Michael Douglas originally, and then Michael Douglas left, and the role was taken over by an actor named Richard Hatch, and who experienced a lot of success in the original Battlestar Galactica. So, it was just it was a fun time. And I did a movie of the week for CBS called Forever, which was based on Judy Blume's novel Forever. I don't know, have you read Forever?
I haven't. I've read some Judy Blume, so I need to check that out.
Well, Judy, this is a first love story. So it's this was Judy Blume at the time. It was Judy Blume's most controversial novel, and I think it was published in 1976.
Okay.
I think 76, something like that. And it it's the love story of Catherine and Michael. And I played Michael in this, and it was shot in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I co-starred in it with an actress named Stephanie Zimbalist, who went on to great success in a series on NBC called Remington Steele. Mm-hmm. But before that, she had done dozens and dozens of movies of the week for television. And Stephanie was a very hot property in the 70s and 80s. And so we did that, and that led to the Little House auditions. And that's how all that got started.
That's awesome. And so what was your favorite part of acting as Almanzo on Little House?
Well, I think just, Mercy, just being there was incredible. I mean, this was, at the time, this was one of the most popular shows on television, and it was inexplicably popular in the landscape of television in the 1970s and 80s, where the networks had really moved away from westerns of any kind. In the early 1970s, it was decided that television was going to stop doing sort of shoot 'em up dramas where the bad guy gets it in the end, and all those shows went away. Bonanza was canceled in 1973 in that part of that same movement, and that led to Michael Landon becoming involved in Little House. And Little House was going to be different because it wasn't, there was no gunplay, and there weren't big fights, and there was none of that going on. It was a family drama. And, I think everyone thought it was soft. It was a very soft, thoughtful, sweet program. Mm-hmm. And what's amazing about it, looking back now 50 years, it will always be a sweet, soft program. And people continue to love it because of that. It's simple, and the story, it's very clear, direct storytelling. The audience always knows what's going on in an episode of Little House. You can see the problem right up front. The actors, the characters don't necessarily know what the problem is. They discover the problem as they go along, but the audience gets to watch as the characters work out whatever that week's problem is. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very instructive to people, young people, It's instructive to young people. It's instructive to parents, where audiences got to and continue to get to watch people make either good or bad decisions. And good decisions are rewarded and bad decisions have consequences. And I think I think that the simple clarity of it has continued to keep it relevant in the minds of the audience. And I know, and we all know that the world is not as simple and clear as it is in an episode of Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't. But what is good is that through the stories that Michael Landon told on using Little House on the Prairie as the basis for those stories, audiences got to learn about simple, basic human behavior. Goodness, decency. They learned about community. They learned about disappointment. They learned about tragedy. And they saw they saw stories that dealt with those themes, and you got to see how people that they trusted, and I say trusted, they trusted the characters on Little House. Mm-hmm. They got to see how those people responded to those things. And I think we've heard for years, Mercy, as a cast, we've been doing appearances for years. We go out and meet people, and always people tell us that they love the lessons the Little House teaches. And it's that's the best part of it. It was great doing it. It's amazing continuing to be associated with something that's so loved. And there was no way anyone could have known this was going to happen this way. But it has happened that way, and it's just been the most amazing gift. And the fact that you and I can sit here talking, you would not be talking to me were it not for Little House on the Prairie. I mean, maybe it would have been something else, but the reason we're talking right now is because of Little House on the Prairie. And at least that's my sense of it. You may have another reason, but I think that that's really it. And that connection that people have with the program remains very strong, and that's been a wonderful thing for all of us who are part of the program.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I mean, I was raised on Little House on the Prairie, and my kids are going to be raised on Little House on the Prairie and stuff, so yeah.
How old are you, Mercy?
I am 24.
You're 24. Okay, so you're not all that far away from making those kinds of choices. I mean, you're not far away from it at all. Yeah. Good for you. I think Little House is something that your parents could trust it for you, and you will be able to trust it for your children. And I think that I don't think unless our value system changes dramatically, mm-hmm. I think that will always be true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, did you guys have any inkling or thought of back when you were on set filming this, the legacy that the show would carry?
Well, Michael Landon knew. He said to me one day that people would be watching Little House long after we were all gone. Well, I was 25 years old, so I was your age when he said that to me. And of course, when you're 24, 25 years old, you're never not going to be there. At 24, 25, you're pretty much immortal.
Yeah.
You think you're just going to go on and on. Now, Michael has been gone. On July 1st, we acknowledged the 34th year since Michael Landon had passed in 1991, which is just extraordinary to think that someone who was as creatively powerful as he was, could actually have been gone for 34 years, because in fact, Michael's never been gone. People are watching the program, watching all the work that Michael did, continue to. I mean, that's one of the amazing things about acting on film, Mercy, is that you do become immortal in a sense. Because if the work is popular, it goes on. And, for audiences into the foreseeable future, Michael will be there, Melissa will be there, Karen Grassley will be there, and we will all be as we were during those years. So, I will live on. and I'm sort of grateful for this, I will live on in people's memories in my years from 23 to 28 years old. And that's a pretty good time to be alive and functioning. I mean, you are at your physical peak, you probably at your aesthetic peak, you are, I mean, things change and evolve, but you're really, that's that old saying, Mercy, that youth is wasted on the young, is so true. I mean, it's a wonderful truism, and it sticks because when you're that young, you really don't know what you've got. Very few people at that age understand the amazing place they are in their life. And how could you understand it? You're just in it. And now at 69 years old, I can look back on those times and say, no, I would not trade it and go back to it. But you look at it and say, wow, that was a really special time.
Yeah.
And so that legacy will continue for all of us in whatever time we were in our lives as we were shooting this. And it was I would tell you, it was a great time for all of us. And I don't think that anybody would look back on their time involved in Little House on the Prairie, either in front of the camera or behind it, and say it wasn't an amazing time in their life. And so, there's just enormous gratitude for all that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I have not read your book yet. It's literally on the way to my house, but I haven't read it yet.
Well, I mean, what do you mean you haven't read it? Well, you're going to read a lot of the things that you're going to see when you get it, a lot of the things that we've talked about today. Yeah.
But I saw that something that is discussed in there is your ancestral connection and parallels to Almanzo Wilder, and I was curious about that.
Well, there's no direct there. I think when I wrote that, I'm thinking I was raised in the 1950s and 60s. Almanzo was raised in the 1850s and 60s. So I was born in 1956. He was born in 1857. So 100 years apart. He was raised on a family farm. Now, I was not raised on a family farm, but I was raised in a large multi-generational family, and I grew up with my family having a family ranch that had been in our family since 1885. And I grew up in this, there was no electricity on the place. There was no running hot water. We ate by the light of coal oil lamps. We ate around a big round table with a big Lazy Susan in the middle of it. And you know what a Lazy Susan is?
I actually have one on my table.
Very good. Okay. So we had a table that could seat, big round table that could seat 10 people. And, it was a 72-inch round table with a big Lazy Susan built into it. And so, you got to look in the eyes of your family around the dinner table every night. And this was during the summer times, and this was always outdoor eating, and we did the dishes together. We did our chores together. My grandfather took us riding. We rode horseback every day during the summer months. It was really a beautiful way to grow up during that time in my life. And I think I developed a real comfort with family living. I developed a comfort and a commitment to being a part of a family and being a contributing member of the family. These are all things that Almanzo grew up with as a young boy. Laura Ingalls Wilder's book, Farmer Boy, is Almanzo's story as a 9-year-old. And as I read the book, and I've read it multiple times now, it's a really beautiful exploration of a year in a young boy's life when he, is sort of figuring out, getting at beginnings of who he is, and falling in love with horses and wanting to raise and care for animals, and work on his family farm with his father and his brothers and his sisters, and it's family squabbles and disagreements, and it's great food. It's the way Laura's descriptions of food in Farmer Boy are just off the charts. Have you read Farmer Boy?
I have.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, it's just
awesome.
The food is amazing, and just that life is amazing. And I felt like when I read the book, I felt like I had so much in common in it, even though this all happened 100 years apart. And I think, jumping back to being an actor, I think actors walk into rooms for auditions, and you're bringing your whole life in the door with you when you come in. Now, you don't realize that you're doing it, but you are, and you're not going to fool anybody. I mean, people can see who and what you are very quickly. And I think, producers and directors and casting directors are trained to be very observant. I mean, that's their whole world, is figuring it. Their professional life is figuring out people who fit into particular circumstances. And I think without me really thinking about it or being aware of it, I walked in the door to audition for Little House just so in sync with what that world was. And I didn't even know how in sync I was, because, Mercy, I'd never read the Little House books at that point. I'd never watched the series. I didn't know. I mean, I knew it was on the air because I saw promos for it, but I had no real sense of what the show was. I mean, the whole world, anyone in the civilized world knew who Michael Landon was. So, that part of it was clear to me, but I never saw a complete episode of the series until I started working on it in the summer of 1979 and started watching summer reruns of season 5. And I'm watching this thinking, this is incredible how good this is and how beautifully shot it is. And the scores are beautiful, and everyone's work is so good. Now, I was obviously hooked into it, and I was getting to know everybody at that point, but I was just so impressed with it. And that commonality of who I was and who Almanzo could be. I mean, I always say to people, Mercy, when people ask me, well, are you like the character or whatever? And I just say, I am he and he is me. I mean, it's like, I am Almanzo, Almanzo's me. I mean, whatever the audience was going to see was going to come from who I was. And I think what Michael saw was the qualities that when he was auditioning me, he saw the qualities that he felt this character needed to have to fit nicely into the world that he had created on television, the Little House world he created on television. And, as the actor, you just have no idea at that stage in my life, Mercy, I didn't know what I was bringing. I just had no idea. And I think that's always been hard for me, is to know what you essentially are, because we just live our lives. We do what we do. People make judgments about us. Everyone is judged when they meet somebody. There are hundreds of opinions that are being formed in a matter of seconds. They say casting decisions are made in about 8 seconds when someone walks in the door. And it doesn't mean if they like you or think you're, it doesn't mean you're going to get the part. But I think what it does mean is within 8 seconds, before you barely opened your mouth, they know if you could be the right person in about 8 seconds. And then everything that happens after that affirms or tears down that first impression. But that impression that you could be right is made very quickly. And I've been on both sides of this, being the actor coming in the door and being the guy in the room who's waiting to meet someone coming in the room. And I just know that that's true. And I feel like I've always been comfortable, at least as on the producer side, I've always been comfortable with my perceptions of who somebody is when I first meet them. As the actor, you just have to come in the door and no pretense and just be yourself. and get out of the room as fast as you can is the goal. It's like, because if you've made a good impression, you don't want to wreck it. And if you've made a bad impression, you're not going to change anyone's mind. So you may as well get out of there as fast as you can. Either way, as the actor, you want to be in and out as fast as you can. And so, I think I just have felt that commonality looking back to those summers growing up on the family ranch. In retrospect, I didn't know it then, but in retrospect, I realized there's a lot of similar energy that I had with the way Laura wrote Almanzo, and I think all that helped me coming in the door.
I love that. Kind of switching gears a little bit, can you share the story of how you and your wife met?
So I met Catherine when she was auditioning to play the role of Mae Woodward on Michael Landon's show that he was doing for Merlin Olsen, the great Merlin Olsen, the former NFL All-Pro who went on to become a great broadcaster for NBC. He played Jonathan Garvey on Little House, and Michael was doing a show for him called Father Murphy. And Catherine was auditioning for the role of Mae Woodward one day out in Simi Valley where we were shooting, and I just saw her coming out of I think she had just had her meeting with Michael, and she'd gone into the makeup trailer to, brush her hair or do whatever, and before she left, and I just saw her there, and we looked at each other and waved. I didn't know her, but there was something about her that was pretty nice, and now we didn't actually get together. We didn't become a couple until 15 years later. I went through a very brief marriage. Catherine had been in a marriage and was then out of that marriage. So just the timing was right. And we both were, years later at a commercial audition for something, and I couldn't tell you what the commercial was for, but she was there in the room and she looked amazing. And she said hi to me. I had my back. I was sitting in front of her. There was a big room and actors sitting in rows, waiting to go in. And she said hi, and I turned around, and it was just like, wow, where have you been? And I just said, can I call you? And she gave me her number, and this was before cell phones. So I raced home and picked up the phone and left a message on her answering machine that she had before she got home from the audition. And she called me, and we chatted, and we met for coffee at her house where we have been living for the last 25 years, or actually it's almost 30 years now. And we met here and had coffee, and that was it. And we've been together ever since. And look, we've had our moments that are, can be a little bumpy, as any relationship can have. But I think we've always known that we were a good fit for each other, and I think we view the world, in much the same way, and where there is contrast on it, it's helpful contrast because it helps sort of fill, everybody has strengths and weaknesses. So, the things that are my strengths can help her, and her strengths help me. And what she was amazing for, what she did that was amazing for me, Mercy, is I was really sort of thinking about, I need to turn away from acting, but I was really afraid to make that change. I didn't know quite what would happen. And Catherine was so supportive, just saying, do whatever follow your dreams, follow whatever it is that you think you want to do, and it's all going to work out. And she really gave me the confidence, because I didn't need to be an actor to be a guy to be a man that she could be in a relationship with. I just needed to be me, and the best me that I could be. And that was very empowering. And so I really started to explore working behind the camera, and I've done that for since the late 1990s. I've been working mostly behind the camera, and then of course with Little House, where Little House is concerned, I'm Almanzo again. I'm always Almanzo where Little House is concerned, but I can be both. I can have my fun being the personality, and then I can also be an organizer and a leader in our cast because of my, and it helps just to have had the experiences that I've had as a producer through the years. So it's all worked out really, really well. And I have had a very blessed life, Mercy. No question about it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Kind of wrapping it up here, what is the best way for fans to keep up with your work?
So I am Official Dean Butler. It's all one word, Official Dean Butler, on Facebook, on Instagram, and at TikTok. And those are the three platforms that I have a presence on. There are a lot of imposters out there. I am the only Official Dean Butler, and I have blue checks next to my name, next to that identity. So anything else that's Dean Butler is not me.
Okay.
And it should just be, if people want to follow me, Official Dean Butler is where they should go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hop on a podcast. I really appreciate it. Again, I grew up on Little House, and this is kind of a dream come true interview for me, so I really appreciate it.
Well, Mercy, you've been very nice, and thanks for letting me share, and good luck with your podcast, and good luck with whatever is coming for you. You've got a lot of opportunity in front of you at 24 years old. Your life is unfolding, on a daily basis. It's just like you've got a lot of fun things ahead of you, I'm sure.
Thank you so much.
Dean, thank you again so much for taking the time out of your day to hop on the podcast and just share about your Little House on the Prairie experience, along with some other life stories. It was such a pleasure having you on here. For everyone listening, thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. If you would like to keep up with other podcasts that we have coming out, just hit that subscribe button. And if you want to keep up with me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at A Worthy Conversation, and on Twitter as Mercy Sugar, and on Facebook as A Worthy Conversation hosted by Mercy Sugar.